Yeah, I'll go share that real quick.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to the Front Row Movie Reviews, the podcast for people who actually like movies and TV. And welcome to our episode 9 of Discovering Star Trek, our look at every episode of Star Trek Discovery, as well as other Star Trek too, but we'll get into that here at the end of this episode. And we are here to talk about episode 9, the mid-season finale of season 1, and that is Into the Forest I Go. I'm Scott, and with me as always is...
Plot hole.
Plot hole, yes. Thank you, sir.
Mike.
And Blake.
Mike and Blake. Well, let's go ahead and just run right into it. And by the way, there will be spoilers ahead, and I don't believe I don't believe I'm having to say this, but for the first time in Star Trek history, we are going to have to talk about Klingon boobs. So we'll get to that later. It's a banner time for Star Trek. Okay, let's go ahead. And actually, yes, Mike is drinking, and I feel the need to do the same. So let's do this. Hey, Creeper. Creeper's already in the chat. And PJ's in the chat too. Welcome, PJ. PJ said, did not have to expect to see Klingon boobies. Well, you did. And Creeper says, sorry, no headphones yet. Be back in a few minutes. Oh, Creeper. Oh, but he said, and yeah, Klingon boobies. Okay. God, we're all adults here, children. Okay. Let's start with Blake, who was absent last week. Blake, give us your first impressions on Into the Forest I Go.
So, kind of first impressions, I was not real thrilled the last couple weeks. I think the quality had fallen off a little bit. First impression of this one, I think they picked it back up. I liked this episode, and we're going to get into reviews and what we liked and didn't like, but I think this was a much better footing episode, and I'm glad they ended the season here rather than with the last episode like they had originally planned.
Mike, what do you think?
Yep, I would agree with Blake on that one. I think this episode, despite the many plot holes that I saw in it early on, it was fun. It picked back up in a good way. It was a lot of fun. It was action-packed. There was a lot of plot advancement in this one, and I totally agree that this was the logical place for them to break mid-season. I'm honestly flabbergasted. Like I can see with the last episode sort of being a cliffhanger of sorts. But man, did it ever not make sense that they would have ever ended it there. Like when this episode was right around the corner. So it was a wise move.
We have a whole bunch of folks in the chat room, so I'm just going to tell you all in the chat to be sure to chime in as well, too, as we go. And John, we weren't looking for them. They were right in front of our faces. So, okay. For me, I'm in the same boat as you guys. I have been very clear that I think the last few episodes have been weaker than the first part of the season, and I'm very glad that we ended on what I think is a decent high note. There's some stuff I'll complain about, but for the most part, I'm happy with this episode. And I agree with you, Mike. I don't understand how anyone would have ended the season or mid-season on episode 8, which was the plan, up until about 3 weeks ago. I think somebody at the showrunner headquarters said this is stupid and we need to end it here, because obviously you had a cliffhanger at 8, but the cliffhanger at 9 is much more. And unfortunately, it's been spoiled for us a couple different ways what it is that's happening, but we'll talk about that when we get into predictions at the end as well, too. So let's go ahead and talk about what we liked about the episode. Oh, and Creeper can hear us. Great. So, Mike, what did you like about this episode?
Kind of said it. It was a lot of action. It was it advanced the plot in a lot of different ways. It generally speaking was just more of a fun episode, akin to the time looping Harry Mudd episode that I actually didn't care for as much. Or well, I guess I'll say I cared for it more now than I did at the time I first watched it. But yeah, I think, and it's interesting because it definitely, one thing I like about it is it didn't tie off a lot of the loose ends that I saw. There's still some ongoing questions about Lieutenant Tyler. I was expecting a lot of things to come to a head in this one, and I'm happy to see that they're saving some gusto for the rest of the season. Now we'll see if that turns out to be, good or bad. But yeah, that's pretty much my...
See, you say things didn't come to the head with Tyler, but I think they definitely confirmed our theory with the last few seconds of this episode.
I mean,
He's a sleeper, obviously.
Yeah, which is a different direction than what I was anticipating.
Yeah, well, remember, L'Rell said to Voq, "You're going to have to lose everything." So I guess that means his memory too.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying though is, I mean, they didn't come right out and say it. It wasn't. we know from being conspiracy theorists and hovering around the internet and that kind of stuff. Like we know what we think is going on. Like, but they didn't come right out and say it. They didn't spill the beans. And
Cynthia thinks she actually saw a little flash of Voq in there in the flashes. I think she's right.
I thought I caught that as well.
Because L'Rell is so pale. When it's L'Rell, you can tell. But there was a couple flashes of ridges where, I'm sorry, other way around. L'Rell is gray, and there was definitely some white ridges in those flashbacks. So I agree with Cynthia on that. And John, I agree with you, John. John says, one thing we know for sure, Tyler doesn't know what he is yet. He's a plant. I think that is something new. We didn't expect that. We all figured that he knew what was going on. But about halfway through the episode, I figured that if this was going to go the way we thought, basically when we started having PTSD attacks, it was that he's going to be a plant, if anything. And so that's what we've kind of seen. Blake, what do you got?
So with this episode, I liked, the pace it picked back up. It felt very much like, an adventure Star Trek episode, kind of with the way they were going with it. I do like that they didn't tie everything up from the first half. They are leaving something left for the rest of the first half of the series, or for the second half of the series. So we can see that. I also liked, they seem to be heading in a direction now. I think the last couple got a little muddied what direction they might have been heading. So I think this one made it a little more clear where they're going. As far as setting up, maybe why we haven't heard of some of this stuff later on in other series and other parts of the timeline. So I overall like the direction it's going, and I think that they really set up a little bit more of the Burnham redemption story with this one. I think they started actually getting to the point with that, which I'm liking.
Yeah. I agree with what you guys have said. I think this episode had really good pacing, which I think was my problem with the last one. The Crystal episode, just the pacing was off. And for this one, you kind of hit the ground running. And throughout the episode, there is something to pay attention to the whole time. And even the Klingons were less annoying this time around. I think it's great that Cole is dead. I really am happy that dude is gone, because he was a pain in the ass. And I like that Burnham called him on the fact that he's not really as honorable as he thinks. I think that was smart. I think that's something we've been saying.
That was the first really enjoyable interaction with the Klingons that I've seen in this whole series so far.
And it's the first time I actually enjoyed watching Burnham do something in that fight.
And Cole turning around and saying, well, what do you know of honor? Was kind of a nice touch as well, because I had said early on in one of our episodes, like, these guys don't seem honorable, and somebody rebutted me by saying, well, to a non-Klingon, sure, they could give a crap less, but to each other, they have this moral code, and so it was kind of, that scene right there kind of confirmed your your theory to me, so I was happy for that.
But and also too with that, even with the Klingon code of honor, whatever that may be, and maybe humans can't understand it, Burnham pointed out well that even with that code, Cole stole this ship. There is no honor in what he did with that ship. And I also like the fact that we got the sarcophagus ship off the board. That thing's not going to be showing up for 15 seasons or whatever. That thing is off the board, and we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, to me that was this kind of weird, like, I guess it could have existed, but like, really, it's kind of a weird thing, and I'm just kind of glad that it's gone. It normalizes the series a bit more for me.
Another thing I liked, as much as I've been the guy who's griped about continuity, the Universal Translator is not as advanced as TOS. It's just little things like that I really enjoyed, because it shows, okay, they got the UT, but much like Enterprise had with having to go through a translator buffer on the ship, they still have to use their communicator. And so it's that little stuff, along with, I've already pointed out in the first episode of this, using the phasers from what looks like the cage, with the little twisty and all that good stuff. That's the kind of stuff I wish they would be doing more, to kind of show us the tech, but make us realize that they are not as advanced as TOS. I really did like that.
You notice they've ditched the holographic
Yes,
video calls as well.
yeah, they were for some reason he was on a little screen that our Vulcan Admiral friend. I got a lot here, so I mean, chime in, guys, when you have something else too. But another area that I did like is how Tyler handled seeing his torturer. You know, Tyler has been this hotshot guy who really can't be stopped or dealt with because he's our everyman security officer. But as soon as he sees Laurel, he freaks the frick out, and I appreciated that.
Well, and I think it's really clever how they're dealing with that side of the story. Not just from him being a sleeper agent, but the extension is, obviously we're meant to think in his flashbacks and his sudden PTSD that he was, having flashbacks to being tortured, when in fact he's having flashbacks to being de-Klingonized or rehumanized, whatever you want to call it.
Well, and that's a conversation going on in the chat room. Were we watching the torture of Tyler or the transformation of Voke to Tyler? And I think it's a little bit of A, a little bit of B myself.
It probably is. It's partly the surgical conversion and partly a programming, for his spy persona.
Yeah, and I do like how they did that with, if that's how they're going, that he doesn't know what he is. I kind of like that part of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because they said early on Discovery was going to be discovering who some of these people were.
Yeah.
I mean, taken to its literal sense, Tyler's not sure who he is at this point.
It also gives me a reason to care about why Laurel really wanted to get on Discovery last episode or two episodes ago. And it is the fact that she is the trigger. She needs to tell Voke when to, emerge from his psychosis or whatever.
Just to whisper banana to
yes.
him.
The bus has arrived. The bus has arrived. Creeper and Cynthia are raining on our parades, Mike. They used the hologram on the bridge in the first part of the episode.
Oh, did they really? I totally bagged on that.
Yeah, and Cynthia is also agreeing with me because I'm always right that Laurel really wanted to get on Discovery to find Voke and Tyler. So I agree with that. A couple other quick things. This is an episode where I started liking Stamets more. Anthony Rapp is a good actor, and I think he hasn't been utilized a little bit in the Mud episode where he was acting kind of goofy, but that was just kind of weird. But this is the first episode where I actually cared about him getting in the chair and getting plugged in, and you can see the pain on his face when he's like in jump 90 of 133. And I liked his interactions with the doctor as well too. So I really liked how Stamets was being handled, and I think I can't remember if it was Blake or maybe Kevin who made the allusion to Gary Mitchell, but I think we're definitely going down Gary Mitchell road here.
Yeah, I think I brought that up a couple ago that, it seems like with what's happening to Stamets, and if you remember back to, I believe it was the Gary Mitchell episode, his eyes turned white too. And
yeah, they were silver. Yeah.
And if you looked at Stamets in this one, he had that white coming into his eyes there at the end of the episode.
And the trailer for the next part of the season had him walking around, tossing people around, and he still has got the white in his eyes. So he seems to be transcending into something else. So I think it's kind of going down that same path. And that could, we never actually got to understand what happened to Gary in the Where No Man Has Gone Before. They crossed the galactic barrier and something happened to him. Because he had a high psychic resonance or whatever. So maybe this is it. Maybe he tapped into the same thing that Stamets is tapping into here. So that's the kind of stuff that a prequel could actually tie into stuff that I actually enjoy. But yeah, anything else you guys want to add about the stuff we liked?
I don't think so.
A couple things from the chat room. Creeper pointed out, as much as he says we don't like JJ's movies, I like 2009 and Beyond. I think Into Darkness is shit, but the other two I like. He says, but I'm loving these window zoom in and outs they're doing, making the ship seem huge and helps people like myself who try to make deck plans. Well, you're going to have to share your deck plans with us, Creeper, but I agree. I like the sense of scale. And I like the idea that I know now where some of the crew quarters are, and I know exactly where the bridge is and all of that good stuff. So I do like that. I think it's kind of dumb to have glass on your bridge. but I mean, even TOS had the little dome up top. So,
skylight.
Yeah, I think it's just a bad design from the 60s that carried over. John says, I thought that when Stamets said to Lorca that that was his last jump, I thought Lorca would deliberately set course to one of the alternate universe coordinates. I'm not entirely sure that's not what happened.
Yeah, I don't think we know yet.
Yeah, we know Lorca knows more about the map than he's letting on, because he'd even tell Stamets he was making this interdimensional map until this episode. And we know Lorca does not want to go to Starbase 46. He wants to stay in the fight. He also knows that his admiral that he sent off to die is not dead, and she's at Starbase 46. So I don't think Lorca wants to go anywhere near.
Yeah, and I mean,
Starbase 46.
We can dip into plot holes a little bit, and the fact that the admiral passed through his ship and they sent her on to Starbase 46 when arguably he could have done something else to avoid facing the music than like jumping to an alternate dimension. But
well, and maybe he didn't know it was an alternate dimension that he was being pulled to, because remember, we know that at least Mirror Universe Stamets of some sort is in communication with our Stamets, or maybe at this point he's transited and he's all Stamets at all times or whatever. But that little look in the mirror from 4 or 5 episodes ago, there's nothing to say that maybe they were pulled into the Mirror Universe by the Mirror Universe Stamets. Who knows?
Yeah,
we'll find out next on January 7th.
Yeah, I guess I don't. Oh, go ahead, Blake. Sorry.
As the one thing on that though is they've been very deliberate in this series of they're not showing us things that don't have a purpose or a point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they made a point to zoom in this time right before the jump on Lorca's hand on his controls at the captain's chair.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Into the navigator. I mean, they made a very that was a shot that was there to be a point.
Yeah.
So
I think Lorca doesn't have anything happen on his ship that he doesn't know about.
Yeah.
Cynthia asks, is this the Mirror Universe episode we've been hearing about? We'll talk a little bit more about this, I think, at the end of the episode. But we do know, and this is all just because people don't know how to keep their mouths shut, Jonathan Frakes, William Riker from TNG, said that he's directed a couple episodes, and the Mirror Universe is going to come into play. And guess what episode he directed next? The next episode. So pretty sure that next episode, which will be in January, is going to deal with the Mirror Universe. We also have seen a picture of Jason Isaacs on the bridge of the ISS Discovery. So we're definitely getting the Mirror Universe here pretty quick. I'm guessing, obviously, next episode. And it looks like the Mirror Universe Starfleet can take out Klingons a lot easier than the Federation can. So,
Scott?
Yes? Well, I think we may have lost Blake. Mike, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, Blake just froze.
Blake
Okay, well, Blake will be back. So, Mike, oh, there he is. Hi, Blake. You've just come back from the ether.
Yeah, you guys just paused and went silent.
Yeah, so did you.
Oh.
Okay.
So
how do we know this is the real Blake?
Yes, Mirror Blake has arrived. The goatee is growing as we speak.
Yeah, goatee will be here in just a second.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into things that we did not like about this episode, and we'll go to Blake first until we lose him again.
So I'll say there actually wasn't a whole lot I disliked about this episode. I mean, there were some plot holes in it, I think, and I think that's one of the things they're struggling a little bit with, and it may be some issues. And I see I'm being called alternate Blake already in the chat. That are driving some of those plot holes with maybe some competing vision. I know they've had some production issues, especially in the writer's room. But like I said, all in all, I liked this episode, and I'm not finding a lot of fault with it. I think the flashback scenes were well done. I think that's painting a pretty clear story. Mm-hmm. If anything, I think it might have been just a little heavy-handed with some of it. I think they might have been able to do it a little more subtly. But, I mean, these are just minor little things that I'm coming up with here for.
Sure. Mike, what do you got, Mr. Plothole?
Yeah, and I'm sitting here thinking about how hard I want to harp on this stuff, and I really don't. Because overall,
we're only 20 minutes into the episode.
I know, this will be the shortest one yet.
Oh no, we've still not hit that one scene. We got plenty of time.
You are right. And I noticed you didn't mention that as a negative, Blake. Just saying.
I have other things with that scene. I'll just say that. I was not watching for Klingon boobs.
Okay, where was I? No, overall, one of the things I was going to say is, the whole plot line revolving around trying to combat the Klingons' cloak and like getting an away team aboard the Klingon Ship of the Dead, and all of that made so little sense to me. Like, you could pick that whole plan apart and just and it seems like, and I get it, that the Klingon cloaking device at this point is probably a earlier version of it than what we're used to seeing in TOS and beyond. But they're just, it's like they knew when a cloaked vessel appeared in orbit over Povia, they can't detect the Klingon ship, and made a point of saying, all these things are, you can't, it's invisible to sensors, and you can't transport people onto it and off to it while it's cloaked. But we can totally put this light up disco ball beacon that talks stealthily aboard this Klingon ship.
I'm glad somebody else noticed.
And
they aren't Section 31, that's for sure.
And we'll have no problem keeping in touch and collecting data off of that while the ship is cloaked. So there's just a lot of stuff like that really irked me, and I'm like, oh, of course it has to be, one of them has to be on the bridge of the Klingon ship. Why wouldn't it?
And the Klingon ship bridge is bigger than Starfleet vessels are entirely?
That's not what they said, but it is pretty ridiculously huge.
She did. She said the bridge is bigger than some Starfleet ships.
No, I heard I guess what I heard her say was that the bridge, the Klingon bridge, is about 4 times larger than a Starfleet bridge or something like that. Which,
again, no matter how big the bridge is, if you walk into a bridge where everyone is and you put down this little thing that goes, device activated, you're going to die.
Yeah, bright flashing lights, voice, and nobody notices.
Look, it is 2017. I have a mute.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, also I have masking tape that I can wrap around the light up parts. And
big old green.
it's they are the worst spies in the history of Starfleet.
I was thinking to myself, I was trying to figure out why the hell they did that. They being the producers and the showrunners. And I'm thinking it's almost because they believe the audience is so stupid that you have to be able to see that these things are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as the button in the elevator lighting up.
There's no reason in hell that you would design these things to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have to sneak aboard a Klingon vessel and hide a speak and spell below their decks in the conveniently positioned pile of crates.
Although I will point out, though, just in the grand stupidity of finding cloaked Klingon vessels, I will point out Star Trek 6 was the thing had to have a tailpipe.
Yeah.
So they have,
And Nick Meyer wrote that,
so
and he's in the writer's room.
Say Nick Meyer has really stupid ways to find cloaked ships.
It's true, and I felt that, like, again, the worst one I thought in my mind was the fact that I felt like in one scene they basically said they detected the cloaked ship like when it came out of warp over the planet, and I'm like, well, if you can detect it, what's the problem?
Yeah, we know it's out there, and we're gonna beam to it as soon as it shows up.
So that whole thing was silly. I don't know whether I like it or hate it that they found the Admiral and Laurel aboard the ship in the body disposal room.
And it looks like the Admiral hadn't moved from when she was drug in there 2 episodes.
Well, her legs were broke, so sure.
She's just sitting there.
But
John says the beacons were made by Acme, by the way.
Well, they didn't explode, so.
Well, this plan was kind of hatched by Wile E. Coyote.
Yes. So, I mean, and this isn't really so much a fault of this episode as it is the fact that, at the end of the last one, we were all confused and have different theories about what the hell happened.
Well,
So we got our resolution this time, and that was something.
The Admiral was right. I mean, the Admiral was alive, so that's one thing figured out.
And Call was on to Laurel and did throw her in the brig or the body disposal room.
Yeah, the the cook the meat before we eat them room. I don't know what the hell was going on.
I'm not sure what that was about.
It just goes with one of the things I still don't like about this is we were supposed, and I bragged about this too much last time, so I'll be very quick, but we were supposed to learn more about the Klingons than other shows. That was one of the things they said to begin with.
Yeah.
I don't even understand how this ship works. Now the ship's blown up, I don't care. But I don't even understand how this ship works. I mean, are you eating these people? Are you letting them cook to death? Are you just impaling them so other people can see? If that's the case, why is it behind a locked door?
Is this just where you throw the bodies until you get the sarcophagus ready to stick to the outside? I don't know.
I'm starting to think that the whole Klingon part of this was something that Brian Fuller was pushing. Mm-hmm. And when Brian Fuller left, before anything was produced, the new writers came in, Kurtzman, Mike, and many others, and said, we don't really like that too much, but we got to stick with his story a little bit. So let's figure out how to blow this ship up really quick. Let's not do as much with the Klingons as he wanted to do. And so we're kind of getting a hodgepodge.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that. And aside from the worst plan in history, or the worst executed plan in history, the 130 some odd spore drive jumps in order to calculate it, like in principle, I think that's like a really clever storyline to go with. It's a little weird. I don't know. Last time I checked, you only needed like 5 spot points in space to triangulate something or whatever. I'll have to go back and rewatch my Stargate to learn the correct answer there. But 133 was kind of an interesting out of nowhere.
Basically, the Discovery was doing donuts around the Klingon ship. That's what it came
exactly
back to.
Right, and I don't know.
And it was kind of funny to watch.
Produced quite so many donuts. Well, it was both funny to watch, and I still think that effect is retarded. But sorry, stupid. I shouldn't have said retarded. That's insensitive.
You can write your hate mail to Mike at thefrontroommoviereviews@gmail.com.
Yeah,
you're now sexist.
Nobody sent me a copy of Blue Eyed Klingon Girl either. So.
I'm disappointed. Yeah, a couple things for me, and again, I'm with Blake. This is really nitpicky more than anything else. I still don't like the fact that we don't have a sense of scale on this war. We're told that by Lorca, trillions of people's lives are at stake, but still only a couple tens of thousands of people have died in this entire war, as said in the past few episodes. So I understand you want to make this be a galactic war, and really it should be. It's basically most of the Beta Quadrant versus most of the Alpha Quadrant. So I get that. As a Star Trek fan, I get that. But as somebody watching this show, you have not given me a reason to care about the casualties of this war. And when you tell me trillions of lives are at stake, I don't see that. I don't understand that. I don't get that sense of scale.
Yeah, we've harped on the numbers thing before and how the death toll up till now seems really, really small compared to now the suddenly trillions that he's throwing out there. Now, obviously, he could be using some hyperbole. Obviously, maybe he's talking about, once Starfleet's gone and they start glassing whole planets, then the death toll will certainly rise. I get it.
Well, and Lorca said that ship could destroy the planet really quickly or in an instant. I don't think we've ever seen that. I don't think we've seen any Klingon ship be able to vaporize a planet. I guess they got a Death Star in cloak too, but
even the Narada was took 10 minutes to do something.
John makes a good point, and it's a very valid point. With so few episodes, it's hard to show scale of war, unlike the Dominion War in Deep Space Nine. But I will counter that by saying, even in Deep Space Nine, not every episode of seasons 5 and 6 and 7 were about the war. You only had a few major war episodes, and those episodes hit home. And I go back to what we were saying several episodes ago. It really only took one scene on Deep Space Nine to let me know this war meant something. That is when the Breen attacked Starfleet Command in San Francisco. When you saw the Golden Gate Bridge burning and Breen ships, That's all I needed to know about this war, and I haven't gotten that from Discovery yet.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the one episode where they played the recording of the miners being bombarded, maybe that scene was supposed to do it for us, but it wasn't enough.
It was on the right track though. Showing civilian casualties is exactly what I want to see. And we know the Klingons still take prisoners. Seriously, if you want to make this have stakes, that's how you do it.
No, I agree.
The only other thing I would complain about is my buddy Saru. Saru made a major turn last episode where he put his crew at stake. He put his ship and the Federation at stake because he felt like he had to be one with Buddha or whatever. And now he's on the bridge like nothing happened. There is that one little scene where he's like, let me talk to the Starfleet command because I know what these guys are thinking. But Saru should be in the brig right next to L'Rell.
Yeah. There's a lack of consequences for every character in Star Trek, isn't there?
Yeah, it's almost like Voyager, man. And this shouldn't be the way it is because Discovery has one thing they've been good about is showing that consequences carry over because it's a serialized episode TV show. But there's no way in hell Saru should be where he is right now without doing some hard time in the brig at least. And it strikes me more why I don't like the previous episode because it has no effect. We're never going to come back to Pavo. We're never going to see them again. Obviously, we don't need their crystal anymore, which is another thing that we're going to have to deal with because obviously we can't see cloaked ships 10 years from now.
Well, hold on. I was going to throw this out there. So, did you note that after towards the end of the episode, after the Ship of the Dead was destroyed, and Discovery was either on its way back to safety or about to leave, Lorca casually throws out there that more Klingon ships are on their way there.
I did see that. Yeah, I did hear that.
so all of that, Pavo's toast. There's
yeah, and we don't care. And thank you, Mike. That was the one other complaint, like a legitimate complaint.
Can I go back to Saru real quick?
Please, go for it.
Because I think some of that with that moment, and I agree about the lack of consequences, but I think some of that is there was a little bit of a scene there with a nonverbal exchange between Burnham and Saru. And I kind of wonder, they're setting it up where maybe Saru starts to understand a little bit more of where Burnham was.
Sure.
That would be interesting.
And that could be, I can see, I'm not saying they did it well, but I think that could be maybe where they were trying to set that up.
And I think they've been going down that road for a while, especially when Saru took command that episode several episodes ago, where he was very bitter that he never got the training that he thought he deserved or needed. But again, even Burnham wound up in the brig for a while. So...
Well, I was going to say, as much as this is a serialized show and should be showing consequences, I'm actually not convinced there have been any consequences for hardly anybody aside from Lorca's eyes and Burnham temporarily getting the new uniform.
Stamets having to become a cyborg.
Well, you know what I mean? It seems like really there may be a consequence for like an episode or two, but in general, it feels like everything is kind of forgotten.
I still think the consequences are season 2.
Yeah,
How do they deal with everything they've done or been through in season 1?
Yeah, well, and we'll also
once the war's over, then they get to go back and deal with some of this, I think.
We'll also have a new captain because I seriously don't think Lorca is going to make it out of season 1. And I don't know who the captain's going to be. I don't think it's going to be Burnham at this point, but we'll see. John also makes an interesting point. Do you think that Burnham and Tyler kept quiet about Saru's actions? I don't think so because Saru was being pretty open about it in sickbay. He was saying, I screwed you guys. So it wasn't like he was being quiet himself. Because he flat out said, this wasn't about me being taken over. And I said that was one of the positives about last week. He wasn't taken over by some kind of mind-bending things. He made a decision. Unfortunately, now his decision doesn't matter in the narrative.
Yeah, which is a bummer. And that was one of the things I said last podcast was that I thought that was a really smart thing that they did, and I hope it doesn't end up meaning nothing, which so far it appears as though it means nothing.
Yeah, Saru's on the bridge. So, he's not being told to shut the hell up, and he's just moving on. So let's move on too. Let's talk a little bit about our final thoughts on this episode, as well as give our ratings, and then we'll go into predictions for the second half of season 1. So for those of you just joining us, welcome. We give these episodes a rating of 1 to 10, and we base that rating off other episodes in the Star Trek franchise. So a 5 would be an average Star Trek episode. A 10 would be City on the Edge of Forever. A 1 would be, I keep going back to lizard screwing, Threshold. So
Speaking of lizard screwing,
that's what it was. Go to warp 10, you turn into a lizard and mate with the captain. I hate Voyager with a passion. It sucks.
Don't we all?
It's pretty bad. So let's go ahead and go to our final thoughts and ratings, and we'll go to Mike first.
Cool guys don't look at explosions. Also, Lorca has some new eye drops, so that's cool. Overall, I don't know where that fit in. Overall, I think it was an enjoyable episode, despite the fact that we just talked extensively about all of the little nitpicky plot hole things and plot lines that don't really make sense, like using the spore drive one last time for no good reason at all to go back home, except to set up the next half of the season. It still managed to be a fun episode, and I've come to think that being a decent episode that's fun is a lot better than being a really solid plot episode that's really boring. So all in all, I'm going to give this like a 7.
Okay, Blake, what do you got?
So again, all in all, I really like this episode. I mean, yeah, there's some nitpicky parts with it. I think it really gets into feeling much more like a Star Trek series than I think it has in a few of the past episodes. I mean, I think they hit their pacing right with this, and I think they really did a good job setting up the second half of the season. I mean, I think you're right. There's no secrets as what it's going to be, mostly because Jonathan Frakes decided to run his mouth well before now.
I love Jonathan Frakes, too. He's a great director, too. First Contact is still an excellent movie.
Yeah, very good movie.
But he needs to shut his mouth.
This makes a great billionaire that's hunting gargoyles.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need that movie. We need a Gargoyles movie.
Yeah, I would go for that. All in all, I think rating for me, I'm going to put this one at an 8.
Okay. And actually, too, Cynthia points out another 1 would be Code of Honor. And I keep bashing on Voyager, but yeah, TNG had some doozies, too.
Code of Honor is not a 1. Code of Honor goes into the negative numbers.
It's in the mirror universe, isn't it? So, for me, Mike, you're right. I mean, we have been nitpicky about this, and several people in the comments section have told us that we're too nitpicky. But every nitpick I made, other Star Trek shows have made and other TV shows have made. So this is not those nitpicks, except for the Saru thing that really ticked me off, aren't really going to damage the score for this thing. I'm going to give it an 8. I think it is a much above average episode. I think it's one of the better episodes of Discovery, and it makes me look forward to the second half of the season. And if they would have ended on episode 8 like they said they were going to, I would not be looking forward to the second half of the season, because episode 8 was a dog to get through. Creeper gives it also an 8. Cynthia gives it a 7. And John gives it an 8 as well. So it looks like from people in the chat room and around here, we all enjoyed the episode.
We're in the ballpark this time.
Yeah, sometimes we're not. We disliked the Mud episode a lot more than other people did. But we're back on the good graces of the community, I guess. So let's go into predictions a little bit. And folks in the chat room, please join in on this too. Where is season 1 heading for the last 6 episodes, which will start January 7th?
Who's first?
Mike.
Oh, all
Mike,
right.
go for it.
I was waiting for the prompt. Yeah, I think aside from the obvious story with L'Oreal, I forgot what her name was, in Ash / Spock, I think what we're going to land up finding here is obviously he's a Klingon spy, a sleeper agent. I have a suspicion that what we're going to find out is that he likes being human more than he liked being Klingon.
Yeah, I can see that. Michael being his connection to the human world, maybe.
Yeah, and he made a point of even saying that, he was a houseless Klingon who was kind of an outcast and didn't really belong anywhere, and that was why Takuma reaching out and giving him an important job was such a big deal to him. So here he is, houseless and disenfranchised from the Klingons that are left, and I think he may just decide that having Michael and and Lorca in his corner is the better way to go. So he'll be really thrown for an emotional, loop there, because it seemed like there's obviously something going on between him and L'Oreal. I keep forgetting her name. I'm sorry.
L'Oreal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's my big kind of new prediction for this. Obviously, we're going towards mirror universe stuff. I don't know that I'm convinced I know what's going on with Lorca. I totally agree with Blake, and that his, the shot of him tapping on the command console was somehow deliberate. I'm not convinced that he's the one that intentionally jumped to the mirror universe just yet, but he is also the first character to bring it up. So I'm just going to say it's possible, and I don't know.
In either case, I think it was deliberate. Either it was Mir Stamets, or Lorca. But I don't think it was by mistake that they showed up in the mirror universe. And I think you're hitting on something there with the kind of unfortunate, as much as I don't like this in drama, but there's going to be a love triangle between Laurel and Tyler and Michael. And I think we're going to have Laurel and Tyler going, I mean, not Tyler, Laurel and Michael going at it, because Laurel's going to be pissed off that Michael has been hanging out with Tyler a little bit too much. I don't know about the whole Tyler wanting to stay human. This is another thing where if this was made 10 years after Deep Space Nine, it would have been really cool. Maybe a little bit more after Deep Space Nine. But maybe this is how you unify the Klingons and the Federation. He's seen both sides now. He understands both sides. But we know that's not going to happen, because in 10 years, the Klingons and the Federation are still going to be at each other's throat.
Well, isn't Worf the first Klingon, the only Klingon in Starfleet?
I believe so, but I said that was Spock and I was wrong.
Yeah, fair enough. But
well, B'Elanna was half human. So
I guess what I'm beginning to wonder is either, these characters don't make it out of this season alive, they pull a Rogue One on us, or it's entirely possible that the people that find out the truth about Tyler keep their mouths shut.
Well, they're going to have to keep their mouths shut about the spore drive, being able to detect cloaks, the mirror universe. They're going to keep their mouth shut about everything.
The cloak thing, I could kind of see them kind of saying, well, that was an early version of the cloak. They perfect it later, and we can't detect it anymore. You did bring up an interesting point about the spore drive I was just going to make, and that is that if there's if the reason that Starfleet ends up not using the spore drive again has something to do with like a big moral quandary about, how you have to operate it and use a living being as a component or something, why haven't we ever seen it from the mirror universe before? Because the mirror universe certainly does not care about that.
Yeah. Well, and we have speed limits in TNG now, which they kind of ignored immediately after that episode. But what are you going to do? Blake, what do you got?
So I agree on Tyler, actually, that I think we're going to see a potentially conflicted point with him where he is kind of sitting there between, he may find out he's Vogue, but he's still going to have all of these human thoughts and feelings from whatever in the hell they programmed him with.
Yep.
So I can very much see that happening. I think we're clearly in the mirror universe, and we're going to see where that runs through. And it's going to be interesting. I'm wanting to see where they tie that into, because we kind of know, unless they completely ignore Enterprise,
which they haven't,
according to Mirror Darkly, they had a Constitution-class ship in the mirror universe.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to maybe see where they get with this and what they get out. I think the setup, though, for the spore drive is they're going to make it back to where they're supposed to be. And I think the reason we never hear from the spore drive is Starfleet's going to want to shut any door to that universe and forget that it's there and cut that access point off if at all possible.
Right. And again, remember that the Admiral in an earlier episode already said that they were producing spore drives for other Federation ships back on Earth.
Yeah.
So I think it goes beyond Discovery. Like, Discovery is not going to fall into a black hole, and that's why we never hear the spore drive. Like, the plans are out there.
Yeah.
We already had another ship. I mean, it got blown up, but I guarantee Starfleet's not going to stop at 2 ships because they know one has worked.
Well, and I'm still not convinced Lorca's not from that dimension, if not another one.
Mm.
From the mirror, because And they've kind of alluded to some issues with Lorca before.
They did. It's possible.
Especially with the Admiral kind of showing up and finding the scars and other things that she wasn't familiar with, and issues with Lorca. Now, where I think they could make it work is if you go to the TNG episode, Yesterday's Enterprise, Enterprise C was thrown through a space-time thing due to an intense firefight.
Yep.
If that happened with Lorca's previous command, there's a way they could tie that in if they wanted to.
And it's interesting because I hadn't considered that before, but the fact that Lorca and his backstory, when it was explained, he was the sole survivor of his ship, and how that, I even said in that podcast, rubbed me the wrong way. It didn't make any sense why that would be. Maybe the real Lorca from our universe didn't survive.
Yeah, and one of the things Discovery finds while they're in this mirror universe is, they're the actual Lorca from their universe.
Or something, yeah.
I hope you guys are wrong. And here's why.
Of course you do.
No, seriously. I mean, I think it cheapens the character. As much as I think Lorca deserves to get everything he's going to get, I think this is just somebody who has gone too far, who saw what the Klingons were capable of and decided in his warped mind that it's better that my crew die at my hands than let them have to handle Klingon torture. And so I think if you make that into he's now just an evil mustache twirling guy, it's less of a character piece for him. The same thing with the Admiral saying you've changed. I think that comes from the fact that he murdered his entire crew. That's going to change you.
I'm with you on this, Scott. I find it a much more compelling story that we have a good guy gone bad versus a bad guy from a different universe. But I'm not convinced which way they're going with it.
Yeah, I agree. I hope you're wrong. You not probably, but you very well could be right.
And some of that could be. I mean, we've kind of seen with Lorca in the episodes. One, he was desperate to keep the Admiral from getting back to where she needed to be, which I kind of feel they let that ball drop. But, the whole idea is, I wonder, could it be now that he's out of that universe, he's trying desperately to be the hero and not be that ass. And I think we've talked about that before. Lorca's got this complex of he wants to be the hero. He wants to be redeemed.
Which is what Michael's going through right now. Not that she wants it, but it's a redemption story for her too, whether we like it or not. So
I thought this was funny. I just saw John's comment that he thinks Laurel is pregnant with Tyler's child. My wife, as we were watching the episode, actually said the exact opposite.
That Tyler's pregnant with Laurel's child?
Correct.
We've never actually, I don't think we've ever talked about Klingon procreation.
See, and there it is. Why do you think Worf is so close to Alexander?
We have definitely glossed over the fact that we have now seen nudity in Star Trek, and I think we did that on purpose.
Yeah.
After all this, we're not going to discuss Klingon boobs. The way to go.
I will say this, though. I mean, if you've been watching Discovery, it is rated TVMA. It has been for every episode. So it was only a matter of times before they go the streaming route and say we don't have to worry about censors. I assumed we were going to have nudity in Star Trek Discovery. I did not think it was going to be a Klingon. Did not think that at all. So, but we could have a procreation episode. It would not be the first time a member of the crew has been pregnant. Remember, Tucker was pregnant for a while in Enterprise, and that was an amazing episode. But no, I think you guys, you're hitting on some valid points here. The one thing, and John points out, I think the second half of the season or season 2 will be dedicated to Discovery trying to get back its own timeline.
Sure hope this doesn't turn into Sliders.
Yeah. Hey, if they bring back Rembrandt and put him on the crew, I love Rembrandt. Remy!
Nope.
We're just going to have Remy randomly show up.
Sliders season 1 is a quality show. I will stand behind that.
Everything after that was not.
Once the caveman Nazis showed up, wasn't that good anymore.
Yeah.
For those who haven't seen Sliders, look it up. It's an interesting. It's how sci-fi, the channel can screw up a show really quick.
Tune into Scott's new podcast starting up next week.
No. I have way too many shows I want to talk about before I have to talk about Sliders. But I did love season 1. Okay. So I think you guys have hit on all the stuff. The one thing I will say is with season 1B, they're going to get us to a point where all of these issues with continuity are worked out in some way. And I hate to say this, but I think what's going to happen is very simply Discovery's memory banks are going to get wiped and the crew's memory is going to get wiped, and that's how we're going to fix this. And I hate that. I hate that in writing. It gets used too much. I think back to Superman 2 with the super kiss. It's a terrible crutch to use, but I think that's where we're going to go.
Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones just show up with a little device from Men in Black.
Section 31 shows up and wipes their memories.
Man, I hate to say it, and it sounds like that would be such a Star Trek thing to do, but I really hope you're wrong.
Yeah, as much as I hope you guys and Lorca's wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but it wouldn't be the first time in Star Trek it's happened.
And I was going to throw this out real quick too, just because it occurred to me while we were talking. I don't know that we've talked about this before, but it is canon that Starfleet experimented with transwarp at one time.
Oh, it was Star Trek 3. The Excelsior had transwarp.
Right. So as a quote unquote new way to fly, and so I will just say that if the spore drive ends up going away, it actually wouldn't be the precedent in Star Trek lore that a new method of transportation was given up on and thrown to the wayside.
Yeah, and we don't know through canon. I mean, there's been a lot of books written about it, but we don't know through canon why transwarp went away after Star Trek 3, aside from Scotty screwing with the engines on the Excelsior. But you're right, it just disappeared. So it would not be the first time. But still, as much emphasis as they put on this, it's not like transwarp being a prototype. It's more of, we use this to fight a war. So
yeah, no, I get it. I'm just it was a correlation that I didn't think we had discussed before. So
no, and you're completely right. And that's what I have to realize. And I think, Blake, you've said this many times. As much as I bash on this season every now and then, and I get nitpicky, it is still the strongest first season of Star Trek we've ever had, without a doubt. Yeah. And even if I go away not liking Discovery, I have to give them that because it looks beautiful. It's well written to a point where at least you get from point A to point B, even if I don't like where you're going. And Code of Honor was in season. Actually, maybe Code of Honor was season 2. No, it was season 1.
It was 1.
Yeah, so I mean, TNG season 1 was a little. I would almost say TOS had better stories in season 1, but of course, Discovery has millions of dollars that TOS didn't have either. Anything else you guys want to add for predictions, or anyone in the chat room want to add anything for predictions?
I just want to add one thing. You mentioned the look of it, and I know early on I was kind of critical on some of the appearance of it. I actually think some of the graphics, especially the ship rendering, has gotten better.
Oh, I think you're right.
And I think that first episode that it appeared, episode 3, I think they were so rushed now to get that thing out the door. Maybe they didn't render it quite as well. And the one thing that drove me crazy, almost every star background had some type of gaseous anomaly nebula in it. They've gone away from that. The ship's CGI has gotten a heck of a lot better. So, yeah, I think they're slowing down a bit. I think they're hitting their stride with it. It's looking good. And I'm anxious to see what else they come up with now.
I agree with you completely. I mean, you go back and look at the Comic-Con Discovery. The first time they showed the ship, it looked completely terrible. That's because they had 3 days to put that thing together. And realize, too, they were filming the final episode of the season right after episode 1 dropped. So they have had plenty of time to put more time into this. And I bet you we haven't heard this, but I wouldn't doubt if CBS put more money into it once they knew they actually had something they want to go with. So they probably had a little bit more money when they're putting together these later episodes too. Mike, you had something?
I was just going to throw out there that as far as visual goes, I mean, I agree. I think this has been a really pretty show. I enjoyed the cinematography in this one quite a bit. And in particular, as far as effects and CGI and stuff goes, I really like the I don't care for the spore drive effect, but when the Discovery is just moving at warp, as we saw in this episode, I actually really enjoy that. I think that's really cool looking.
I agree. Yeah, I think they definitely have come a long way on that. Which brings me to the last gripe I have, and I've been talking about bringing this up for 2 weeks, and I keep forgetting to do it, so I'm going to do it right now. CBS has announced that they have at least 2 million subscribers to All Access, and a bulk of those subscriptions came after Discovery dropped. So could you please, for the love of God, fix your servers?
Yeah, the
I had
stuttering.
I had to buffer 3 times tonight, and it stutters all the time. Like during the fight scene between Michael and Cole, it just froze several times. And I know it's because probably 500,000 people are watching this at the exact same time. I'm giving you $10 a month, and the probably half of the 2 million other people are giving you $10 a month. Buy a better server.
Yep, I have the exact same problem. I now I don't have the buffering. I will say that I'm pleased that I can start an episode and get through it. Except for they had 1 week that was really rough, and we all had problems. But the stuttering kills me, though, man. It does it nonstop from beginning to end in the episode, and for me, it freezes as the audio keeps going for almost a solid second at a time.
Yes. And for the first couple episodes, I didn't complain about it because I thought it was me. I thought maybe my internet just sucks, or maybe my Chromecast is overheating or something. But I watched Stranger Things on a binge session 2 weeks ago with Netflix, and that's the first time I really watched Netflix in my upstairs TV where I watched Discovery. Crystal, not a problem.
Yeah,
no frame rate drops, no buffering, no stuttering, nothing. So it's not my rig, it's not my gear, it is CBS.
Yeah, I've been frequenting some of like the Star Trek fan groups on Facebook, and I've seen similar remarks about it. So they definitely need to get their crap together if they want to make the CBS All Access a real thing.
Yeah, and they're bringing out more shows. They've announced like a buddy cop show. There is obviously season 2 of Discovery is coming. So you've got money here. You're making money. Netflix paid for season 1. You've got money. Fix your damn servers. Because I'm going to stick with you because I have to, because it's Star Trek and I'm a sick bastard. But a lot of people aren't going to stick with you if you continue to have these issues. So they need to fix it.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say, John's bringing up something in the chat, and I've noticed this too, especially that week that we all had issues with the streaming. Now, on either of my Apple TVs, I couldn't stream the thing at all. I loaded it on my MacBook, not a problem, which then I just projected it to my screen, and it worked fine. So I'm wondering if it's some type of platform-based
I don't know.
but you're right. They need to fix whatever the hell it is.
I'm streaming to a Chromecast from my Android device, and I've used a couple different ones.
Well, there's your problem.
Bite me. But so, I mean, I've been using the same Chromecast, and again, Netflix runs like a charm. And Netflix has billions of dollars, so they've been able to invest more in CBS. But CBS has made a lot of money off this show, or they wouldn't be making a season 2. So fix the problem is all I'm saying.
I agree.
Not that CBS listens to us. Although you did give me a copyright strike once, so somebody listens to us. So fix the darn problem.
Maybe that's why you got the strike, Scott. You lectured them about their problem.
Oh, I get strikes for many reasons. I love dealing with lawyers on YouTube. It's so much fun. Fair use is a thing, by the way. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our break. I haven't talked to the guys about this, so I'm hoping they're okay with it. I kind of mentioned it last episode.
Here it comes.
We were expecting this show to go a lot longer. I was expecting the show to end in March or April and not come back until February. It's coming back January 7th, and it is ending February 11th. So this show will be done with season 1 very, very quickly before we even know it. And there's only going to be a few weeks between now and when season 1B starts up. So here's my thought. I would like to keep this going at least semi-regularly while we're in hiatus. And so for next week, if I can get at least 3 people to record, I would like to talk Orville and get that discussion out of the way and talk about the other Star Trek show on TV right now. And then the week after that, I would like to talk about some of our favorite Treks, some of our favorite episodes, and then see where we go from there. So at least for the next 2 weeks, we'll have some shows coming to you. And again, next week, as long as I can get some folks to record with me, I definitely want to talk about the Orville as our next episode. And then we'll be
talk
back.
Orville.
Excellent.
I'm up,
And then
I'm up to date.
Yeah, so am I. And so Rob Lowe makes a sexy alien. Rob Lowe's is sexy, but he makes a sexy alien too. And they definitely aped Naked Time like no other. Which has a whole nother kind of distinction with Sulu running around with his shirt off now that we may know some more things about George Takei, unfortunately.
I sure hope that's bogus.
I really hope it is too. I mean, most of the folks I just assume, yep, you're a creep, but I don't want George to be a creep. I really don't.
I agree. I told somebody that if something comes out about like Tom Hanks, I'm gonna jump off a bridge.
there was an article that came out. It wasn't The Onion, but it was something where it said actresses continue to point out that Tom Hanks is a good guy.
Good.
So we'll be talking Orville next week, I think is what we'll go with. So we'll figure that out, hopefully the same time, but we'll let you all know when we get that scheduled. And for those of you listening to the podcast, it will be out Monday as normal. I know that the front row is going to be having some major changes coming for the good. And we're talking with Jeremy, the editor-in-chief, about that now. So stay tuned. I think there's going to be some good stuff coming our way here very soon in terms of our TV reviews as well as our movie reviews. So until next time, you can find us at our website, thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. You can find us via email at thefrontrowmoviereviews@gmail.com, and that's where you can send your hate mail to Mike right there. If you're listening to us on your podcast device of choice, please be sure to give us a subscribe and a review, and shoot over to iTunes and give us a review over there too. We really appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, either in the live stream right now, or if Creeper and Cynthia are both very happy that we're doing Orville next week. So we'll be doing it next week.
I will just say, I work with Cynthia, and she has told me multiple times she would like us to do Orville. So
sounds good.
There you go, Cynthia.
Let's lock it in. Blake and Mike, are you guys good with 9 o'clock on Sunday?
Yeah,
I believe so.
Okay, so we will be here live 9 o'clock Sunday on YouTube to talk Orville. So those in the chat room, join us there. Okay, and then if you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to get notified when we're going live, hit that little notification bell, and you'll know right when we are live, so you can join the conversation here with us as we go. Again, we really do appreciate everyone sticking with us on this. We've had some great feedback, some great interactions. The comment sections continue to go crazy after we drop these things, and I really appreciate that. And we're looking forward to the second half of season 1. So until next time, I am Scott, and with me has been
Mike
and Blake.
And we are going to go into the forest, whatever that may mean. We'll see y'all next week to talk the Orville.